You know that strange frustration when you're trying to assemble a machine using instructions that feel like they were written by an alien? You rotate the parts, examine the gears, follow every diagram with perfect logic, only for the whole mechanism to explode in your hands like a cartoon booby trap. You stand there in disbelief, thinking, how can something so simple turn into such chaos? That, brother, is exactly what happens when a man tries to decode female psychology through male logic. It's not merely difficult, it is structurally impossible. You might as well try to run iOS software on an outdated Android motherboard. The result isn't confusion, it's a fatal compatibility error. Most men don't even realize they're using the wrong operating system. They assume logic is universal. They believe that fairness, consistency, and reasoning apply equally across genders. They think women process information the way men do, through patterns, through cause and effect, through direct explanations. They think conversations are about resolving issues. They think love has one definition. They believe loyalty is reciprocal. But once the code is exposed, you'll see a truth that rewires your entire understanding of relationships. The female mind does not run on logic. It runs on emotional algorithms. And these algorithms were not designed yesterday. They were written by evolution over hundreds of thousands of years, long before cities existed, long before apps existed, long before humans even had language. Men evolved for a singular path. Times solve problems. Times build structures. Times protect territory. Times maintain stability. But women evolved for an entirely different survival challenge, one that had absolutely nothing to do with physical strength, hunting, or brute strategy. Their biological mission was survival through social intelligence. Times reading emotions. Times manipulating environments. Times extracting resources. Times securing protection. Times evaluating male value through subtle cues. Not because they are bad. Not because they are weak. But because for 99% of human history, a woman's physical disadvantage forced her brain to specialize in other forms of power, forms that most men never learn to interpret. Yet modern men walk around with this naive belief that women think like them. They say things like, if she loved me, she wouldn't do that, or but this doesn't make sense, or I explained everything clearly, why is she still upset? Because you are speaking Spanish to someone whose brain processes the world in Mandarin. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Women understand men far better than men understand women. Why? Because their survival depended on reading microsignals of male strength, confidence, fear, or weakness. A woman who failed to read a man correctly 50,000 years ago might end up abandoned, unprotected, or worse. But a man who failed to understand female psychology, well, his life wasn't at risk. His feelings were. And so the evolutionary software diverged. Men became builders, women became interpreters. Men became problem solvers, women became emotional analysts. Men look for solutions, women look for meaning. Men live in the present, women live in the web of past emotional memories. Most men try to fix the relationship as if it were a leaking faucet. But a woman is not a faucet, she is the entire electrical grid. One wrong wire burns the whole house down. And here is the first real revelation. You are losing because you don't even know the game being played. You think you're in a partnership. She thinks she's in a dynamic system where value, emotion, and hierarchy shift every hour. You think loyalty means stay. She thinks loyalty means constantly earn your place. Understanding this shift, this incompatibility of operating systems, is the doorway to everything that follows. Because once you see the code, once you learn how the system actually works, every past breakup, every argument, every moment of confusion becomes painfully, brutally clear. Welcome to the beginning. This is the first crack in the illusion. And before you assume this is exaggeration, understand this. These algorithms were not invented by society. They were carved into the female nervous system by evolution itself. Every woman, your girlfriend, your ex, your mother, your crush, runs these 4 calculations subconsciously, all day, every day. Just like your phone silently updates apps or cleans memory in the background, the female brain is constantly running these protocols beneath the surface. Once you understand these 4 variables, you unlock the entire system. Algorithm 1, what do I feel right now? Not yesterday. Not last month. not the promises you made, not the future you're building. Women operate in emotional presentism, the belief that the emotion of this exact second is the ultimate truth. If she feels unloved now, the fact that you showed love yesterday becomes irrelevant. If she feels ignored now, your entire relationship history resets to zero. If she feels attracted now, she believes the relationship is perfect. If she feels bored now, she questions everything. Men process timelines, women process emotional snapshots. This is why you can spend months being consistent, but one bad evening destroys everything. Her brain is not evaluating continuity, it is evaluating current emotional resonance. Algorithm 2. What can I extract from this situation? Before you panic, this is not about gold digging. Extraction isn't always money. The female brain evolved to secure survival through resource acquisition, which includes times attention, times validation, times effort, times emotional investment, times time, times protection, times lifestyle upgrades, times status elevation. To a woman, resources are not just physical, they are emotional, psychological, and social. Her mind is constantly scanning. Is this interaction giving me something? Or is it draining me? This is why a man who stops giving value becomes invisible. It's not that she stops loving him, it's that her biological algorithm cannot justify the investment anymore. Algorithm 3. How does this affect my status relative to other women? Most men underestimate the brutality of female-female competition. Women don't compete like men, openly, directly, aggressively. They compete silently, subtly, socially. Every choice she makes runs through a hidden hierarchy filter. Times does this make me look like I'm winning? Times am I doing better than my friends? Times is my relationship stronger than theirs? Times does my man make me look superior? A woman is not comparing herself to her past self, she is comparing herself to other women's highlight reels. This is why she suddenly becomes unhappy when a friend's boyfriend buys her something. Her emotional satisfaction was never about the thing itself, it was about the ranking. Algorithm 4. Can I find a better option? This is the algorithm that men fear the most. Hypergamy. The biologically wired drive to seek the highest value male available. Not necessarily the richest, the most handsome, or the most muscular, but the man who provides the strongest combination of times status, times confidence, times psychological strength, times emotional excitement, times value retention, times future security. And here's the twist that men never understand. Hypergamy runs continuously. It doesn't stop because she loves you. It doesn't pause because you're loyal. It doesn't turn off after marriage, kids, or shared memories. It is always scanning the environment, evaluating whether her current emotional return on investment is optimal. Not because she's cruel. Not because she's ungrateful. But because her ancestors who didn't do this died out. These 4 algorithms run 24/7. Together, they create the female operating system, a constantly updating emotional comparative survival machine. Men think relationships are built on logic, fairness, and consistency. Women operate on emotion, extraction, hierarchy, and optimization. This is why arguments with women feel chaotic to men. They're not chaotic. They're just being run by an alien set of rules you were never taught. Because a woman is never operating alone. She is plugged into a social matrix that feeds her perspectives, reshapes her emotions, and updates her relationship expectations in real time. Men live in individual realities. Women live in shared emotional ecosystems. And within that ecosystem exists a constant, silent war. You've heard women say things like, "We support each other. We empower each other. Women uplift women." Nice slogans. They look great on Instagram. But the reality is far more primitive and far more brutal. Female solidarity is a PR campaign, not a biological truth. Evolution hardwired women to compete for the highest value male. Not through physical confrontation, but through status positioning, emotional influence, and social maneuvering. When you observe groups of women long enough, you begin to notice the real dynamics. Times compliments laced with subtle dominance checks. Times advice engineered to sabotage rivals. Times friendships built on emotional transactions. Times secrets shared strategically as future leverage. Times group opinions shifting like school of fish reacting to a threat. This isn't friendship. It's hierarchy maintenance. People talk about how women who live together eventually sync their cycles. They call it mysterious, spiritual, magical. But no one mentions what actually happens psychologically. Their emotional patterns sync too. Their speech rhythms align. Their opinions merge. Their values homogenize. Their desires become copy-pasted. Why? Because female psychology is cooperative in communication but competitive in value. Women subconsciously adjust themselves to match the group's emotional frequency, while quietly trying to secure a position slightly above it. It's a dance of harmony and rivalry, happening at the same time. Men think women meet to relax, talk, drink, have fun. Wrong. A girl's night out is times a status audit, times a relationship comparison ritual, times a resource bragging contest, times a hierarchy reshuffling ceremony, times a reconnaissance mission for emotional data. Every story told, every complaint shared, every compliment given, has an agenda. Women use these gatherings to measure times who has the most desirable man, times who is getting the most attention, times whose partner provides the best life, times who is secretly unhappy, times who is rising and who is falling in the matrix. If a woman comes home from GNO suddenly irritated with you, jealous, distant, or dissatisfied, it's not random. She just compared her entire life to her friends' curated narratives, and her emotional ranking updated. Her happiness isn't measured by her life alone. It's measured by how much better or worse her life is than the women around her. Men talk to transmit information. Women talk to shape reality. A woman's emotions are not a reflection of truth, they are tools of influence. Crying is persuasion. Silence is pressure. Anger is negotiation. Sadness is leverage. Affection is reward. Withdrawn affection is punishment. When she complains to her friends about you, she's not seeking advice. She is establishing herself as the victim in the narrative and making you the villain. Once her friends confirm this storyline, her emotional matrix updates, even if the story is exaggerated or entirely one-sided. Female communication works like a collective reality creation device. In the modern world, women demand equality, but only where it benefits them. Equal rights. Yes. Equal emotional labor. No. Equal pay. Of course. Equal risk in dangerous jobs? Absolutely not. This is not hypocrisy. It's optimization. Women evolved to maximize gain and minimize cost. And in the social matrix, every woman measures her life not by fairness, but by advantage. A woman who stops creating drama is a woman who has emotionally checked out. Drama isn't chaos, it's emotional refueling. It's her way of maintaining emotional intensity, which she interprets as connection. When she complains, she doesn't want a solution. Solving the problem eliminates the flow of emotional energy. The problem is the point. The female social matrix is a battlefield of soft power, invisible strategies, and constant comparisons. This is the world your relationships actually exist inside of. And you haven't even seen the darkest layer yet. Now that you understand the algorithms and the social matrix, it's time to uncover the mechanism that terrifies men the most. The mechanism that destroys marriages, dismantles long-term relationships, and blindsides even strong men who think they're secure. Female hypergamy. Hypergamy is not a preference. It's not a personality trait. It's not something she chooses consciously. It is the core survival algorithm her ancestors handed down. While men search for loyalty, love, and stability, women search for something entirely different. The best available option. And the most dangerous word in that phrase is available, because availability shifts every minute. Hypergamy updates like a stock market ticker. A man who was high value last year might be mid-value today, and low value tomorrow. To the male brain, this feels cruel. To the female brain, this feels normal. Women evaluate men continuously, not once. There is no locked-in status. There is no "you're safe now." There is no "I chose you, so you can relax." The female brain is constantly scanning for signals. Times is he still ambitious? Times is he still confident? Times is he still desired by others? Times is he improving or declining? Times is something better accessible? Times does he still make me feel something? This is why a man can be with a woman for 5, 10, 20 years, and lose her in a single season of stagnation. Hypergamy is not about greed. It's about risk management. A woman's ancestors who failed to secure the best possible mate often face starvation, violence, or abandonment. That instinct still lives in her bloodstream. Most men think women respond to words, gifts, apologies, vulnerability. They don't. The female brain responds to strength, which includes times emotional stability, times unshakable confidence, times decisiveness, times scarcity, times self-respect, times ambition, times frame control. But here's the part men fail to grasp. Women have an almost supernatural ability to detect weakness. Not because they are magical, but because evolution sharpened their sensory systems toward survival. A man hesitates before replying to a text, she senses doubt. A man apologizes excessively, she smells fear. A man opens up at the wrong time, she perceives instability. A man becomes clingy, she reads it as dependency. A man cries in front of her, she registers a structural break in the fortress she depends on. You may think you are being emotionally honest. She reads it as, this man cannot protect me emotionally, socially, or psychologically. It's not her fault. It's her programming. Women don't leave because they're heartless. They leave because weakness triggers a survival alarm that men don't hear. Most modern relationships follow the same quiet pattern. 1. She enters sweet, feminine, affectionate. 2. He invests more. 3. She subconsciously tests him. 4. He folds to please her. 5. She loses respect. 6. He tries harder, becoming weaker. 7. She emotionally withdraws. 8. He panics. 9. She leaves, or drives him to leave. Men think they lost her because they weren't enough. No. They lost her because they stopped being a challenge. A woman needs emotional friction, not emotional obedience. She needs strength to push against, not softness to mold. She needs a fortress, not a doormat. Technology weaponized hypergamy. Dating apps gave women infinite perceived options. Social media inflated expectations beyond reality. Attention became a currency. The result. Times 20% of men receive 80% of female attention. Times average men become invisible. Times women prefer sharing a high-value man over committing to an average one. Times loyalty becomes performance-based. Times marriage becomes fragile. Times divorce becomes normalized. Women initiate most divorces, not because they're villains, but because their hypergamy constantly recalibrates. A woman will not stay in a relationship where she feels she is settling downward. A man works for years, builds himself up, becomes successful. His wife supported him through the struggle. Then, the moment he becomes a high-value man, she leaves. Why? Because the equation changed. Not because he became worse, but because her relative value in the relationship dropped. She no longer felt like the prize. When women leave successful men, it's rarely about him. It's about her updated evaluation of herself. You've now seen the operating system, the algorithms, the social matrix, and the hypergamy engine. You've seen how women evaluate men, how they detect weakness, how they update their choices in real time. And once you see all of this clearly, you face a crossroads that every awakened man must eventually confront. Most men never reach this point. Most men never see the patterns. Most men live their entire lives inside the illusion, believing women think like them, love like them, commit like them, and stay loyal like them. But you made it here. And that means the illusion is already cracking. Now comes the real question. What do you do with the truth? Because once you understand how the female operating system works, you can no longer interact with women the same way. The fairy tale collapses. The romantic myths fade. The comforting lies evaporate. You begin to see everything, her words, her emotions, her reactions, as signals, tests, calculations, algorithms. You see behind the mask. And here is the unsettling part. Women despise men who see the code. Not because the code is wrong, but because the code is no longer effective the moment you recognize it. Her power rests entirely on male ignorance. A woman's influence depends on the man believing the emotional performance, not analyzing it. Once you begin to see patterns instead of stories, logic instead of guilt, evolution instead of emotion, you break the spell. You exit the matrix she relies on. This is why women viciously attack men who expose these dynamics. This is why any man who talks about hypergamy, emotional tests, or female nature is labeled toxic, misogynistic, dangerous. Not because he's lying, but because he's telling the inconvenient truth. A truth that threatens their ability to reshape reality through emotion. A man's love is a commitment, a direction, a chosen loyalty. A woman's love is an emotional weather report. It reflects how she feels in the present moment, not a binding contract. This is why she can love you in the morning, resent you in the afternoon, and cry over losing you at night. Men attach loyalty to time. Women attach loyalty to emotion. Understanding this breaks the fairy tale, but it also frees you. Once the illusion breaks, men face two choices. This path is for men who choose to stay in the arena, but with their eyes open. To walk this path, you must. Times hold frame under pressure. Times stop over-explaining. Times stop apologizing for existing. Times set boundaries without fear. Times lead the relationship, don't react to it. Times maintain ambitions beyond her. Times show emotional stability instead of emotional openness. Times give affection, not validation. Times provide clarity, not comfort. Times stay unpredictable, not unstable. A woman respects strength, not softness. She loves a man she cannot fully control, not one she can easily predict. She bonds to a man she must win, not a man already at her feet. If you learn the code, you stop being manipulated by her emotions. Because you stop confusing her emotions for truth. This path is for men who simply refuse the game. They choose freedom, mission, and purpose over emotional volatility. These men. Times build themselves. Times pursue their goals. Times create legacy. Times live by logic and principle. Times refuse to be enslaved by guilt, shame, or fear. They don't hate women. They simply refuse to be ruled by female emotional algorithms. Some men go monk mode, some go long-term casual, some focus purely on career. The path doesn't matter, the decision does. The decision to stop expecting women to be what they are not. You cannot change female nature. You cannot rewrite billions of years of evolution. You cannot rationalize emotional algorithms into logical obedience. The only thing you can change is how you respond. The moment you stop expecting her to think like you, love like you, or commit like you, is the moment you finally stop losing. Awareness is freedom. Understanding is power. Truth is liberation. Most men will walk away from this message. They will return to their illusions. They will cling to their comforting lies. But you watched until the end. And that means you are not like them. You are evolving.